Hello, you've reached Gloria with Farmstead Talk, and I am here today with Dorothy from Mom's Indoor Garden, and she is representing her state of New Hampshire today in this homesteading interview. Welcome, Dorothy, and thank you for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a delight. Go ahead and share with the audience where they can find you on social media.
You can find me at Mom's Indoor Garden on both Instagram and Pinterest. Also, Facebook, I'm actually on Dorothy Chapman.
Okay.
So that you can find me there under my name. I'm usually just on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay. And then do you have a blog as well?
I do, and it's MomsIndoorGarden.com.
Okay. Very good. Go ahead and share with me a little bit about you, yourself, where you're living, and a little bit about your family.
Okay, so I live in New Hampshire, southern New Hampshire, actually in the western part of the state. A lot of people might know Mount Monadnock. Mount Monadnock is the most climbed mountain in all of the United States, and I live literally in the foothills of Mount Monadnock. I look out my window and I can see it. So it's a great, great place to live, very rural, beautiful scenery. Cold winters though, because we are in the snow belt of New Hampshire, so we get a lot of snow, very short growing seasons. That's one of the reasons why I grow indoors, is because as beautiful it is as it is here, we get a lot of snow. And it's just myself and my son. I'm a single mom. My son is going to the University of Maine starting next year, and we're really excited about that.
Me about how you used to grow commercial, or used to sell, your business was selling commercial greenhouses.
Yeah, so back a few years ago, when my son was a junior in high school, we decided we wanted to open a business together. I had a recycling company. I owned a recycling company in the state of New Hampshire. Decided to sell that company because it really wasn't what we were looking to do as a physical job. So we were looking for something better, and I love gardening. So we thought, well, there's a need around here because of the short growing season, the burgeoning art industry, and just growing in general, that greenhouses would be a good idea. So there were no companies that were building commercial grade greenhouses for small CSAs or residential use. And I thought, well, that'd be a great niche. So my son and I set out to learn everything there was to learn about greenhouses, and we designed commercial grade greenhouses, but for residential purposes. So very small greenhouses. Our typical one was the size of a single car garage. But made in the exact same style with the same materials as commercial greenhouses. That way they would withstand the weather in New England. And we were really successful with it. It was a lot of fun. We met a lot of great gardeners, a lot of great people, and had a lot of fun doing it. Decided in the long run, it probably wasn't the company we wanted to continue with, just because of the labor involved and the short actual season of the company. But it led to meeting some really great people and having a lot of fun. So we did that for a couple of years. It was great.
I know that you are really into indoor gardening and big into hydroponics. So Tell me how you got started with your hydroponics.
Basically, I ran across some stuff on YouTube about hydroponics, and I thought it was really interesting. I liked the science behind it. And then my son and I put up greenhouses for a couple of years. We used to design and build small-scale greenhouses for small CSAs and a lot of marijuana growers, and they are big into hydroponics, and it sort of got me into more of that end of the business, looking at what was going on, and I just found it really interesting. Not a giant science person. I love the thought of the science, but really I'm more of a practical person. So what I tend to do is I tend to take hydroponics and make it a little bit more less scientific and more everyday. So I take everyday things and make them into hydroponic systems.
Okay.
And always inside.
So what led you to the interest of the hydroponics?
I just thought it was a great way to grow. I have a place that has very poor soil. I've moved a couple of times over the last few years, and so didn't really have a chance to establish a really good outdoor soil. And when I first started hydroponics, I was mostly an outdoor gardener. So I thought that was a great way to kind of overcome the bad circumstance I had with actually trying to augment bad soil, making it good. Since then, I've kind of moved everything indoors, and hydroponics works great indoors. You can make really small units. You can do creative ways to make it work into small spaces. And because of the fact that hydroponics, mostly the grow because of water temperature is warm, unlike you're trying to wait for soil temperature. So you can control that indoors really easily.
Okay. So hydroponics, well, I think it could be easy, and I think you can really make it complex if you wanted to.
Yep.
So share with the audience how one could go about making the most simplest form of a hydroponic system. What does it include, and how would you set it up?
Okay, so hydroponics is really easy when you just break it down to its basics. Hydroponics is basically growing plants in water. If you ever put a cutting in a mason jar on a windowsill, you actually have a hydroponic system right there. That's all it is. So these big fancy systems that you see, that's just an extension of that really basic fact that plants need, their root systems need nutrients, they need water, and they need air. So the hydroponic systems basically take those three things and deliver them to the root system in various ways. And you can really do that in all kinds of complex ways or all kinds of really easy ways. I like the easy way because I'm kind of a simple person. So one of my favorite things to do, and I think I sent you a picture of this, is an aquaponic system. You can get a lot of information about nutrients, and you get all bogged down on what the nutrients balance is in these systems. And I find fish are great because basically fish poop will give the plants everything that they need. So if you want to start a hydroponic system at your house, I always recommend people put something on a fish tank. Basically just get a fish tank and either direct plant in the fish tank if the plants are small, or just get some kind of table or system where you can pump the water from the fish tank, just past the roots of the plant and back into the fish tank. The plants will take out the stuff that the fish don't like, and the fish will put in the stuff that the plants like. And it truly is that simple. My blog has some more information on it, but it's not a complicated system. Start easy, start small, and then work up to these big crazy systems if you like.
So when you say you can directly have a fish tank and put the plants in there, what would that look like? How would you do that?
Okay, so for small systems, it's really easy. If you have a small tank, like let's say you had a 10-gallon tank. My son used to have a tank with a, whatever that little fluffy fish is that goes by.
Betas?
Yeah, thank you, the beta fish.
Yeah.
And basically we took off the top of the fish tank, took off the cover, left the filter, and if it's a small tank like this, you leave the filter on, and we basically just put a piece of plywood over the top and cut holes for those net cups that you see that all the hydroponic stores, and you put the plant in the net cup and just let the roots hang down into the fish tank, and the fish tank cover will hold the plant up, and the roots dangle at the water level, and they'll get what they need. They'll grow right into the water. We did that with a couple of different plants, and the plants were so happy and the roots did so well that it actually outgrew, and the fish ended up with no place to swim because the roots ended up taking over. So you can switch them out. The fish will nibble at the roots a little bit, but no worries because the plant will grow faster than the fish will eat.
Okay. So do you still keep, so I know you said you keep the filtration system in there. You keep the little water bubbler in there so that the plants can
Yeah, because remember, your plant roots need nutrients, water, and air. So the bubbler in the water at that point not only helps the fish, because the fish need to breathe also, but it helps the roots. You can't submerge plants all the way in water without an air system of some kind because they will drown. So regardless of how you set up your system, make sure that your plant roots have access to air. And if you're doing a non-circulating system, you want to make sure that if you have, say, 2 inches of root, an inch of that is underwater and an inch of that is above water. And obviously just take it for a bigger plant, but it's the same thing. It's 50% in the water, 50% out of the water, if you're having something without an extra air system in it.
So what happens if, for example, we're going to use this scenario with this 10-gallon tank?
Yep.
What if you want to start off with cuttings? Now, I know that people use those high groton little clay pebbles. Is that what you use?
I just call them clay balls.
Clay balls.
So I like, they make volcano rock. I love those. And what I would typically do is take a cutting. Before you put it in your fish tank, you want to make sure it roots pretty well. So put it in a mason jar on a windowsill, and make sure you have a decent root system depending upon the plant. You basically want an established root system. Something that if you looked at it, you would say, oh, this is ready to plant in the soil. At that point, put it in your net cup. With the lava balls are great to put around it. It'll establish some stability for the stem, and just drop it into the holder above your fish tank. And as long as at least a tiny bit of that root is touching the water, the plant knows to continue to grow down into the water.
So then you cannot use just a regular cutting and stick it in before it's rooted? Have you tried
You have
that?
to root. Yeah, you really need to root, no matter what hydroponic system you're using, and whether it's Dutch buckets or NFS systems or whatever, you always want to make sure your plants are rooted first. Because remember, the thing with the hydroponics is you're typically having a film of water or film of solution, whether it's in a stagnant fish tank or whether it's passing through or in a drip system. The water is passing by the roots. If you don't have a decent root system to begin with, then your plant is going to suffer. So just like when you're soil planting, you take your seedlings and you put them in the little seed cup and you make sure they get established, and then you plant them in soil, or you plant them outside in your garden. You want to do the same thing in the hydroponic system. You want to make sure that you have an established root system before you throw it in any hydroponic system.
So you know how they sell cloners, or people make homemade cloners, so they don't have roots. So how does that work?
Right. And there's always ways around everything, and I know that, like the AeroGarden, which is a really popular thing, they don't start with pre-rooting them. So yeah, you can do it that way, but think about it. If you have seed in like rock wool, which is that typical medium that you hold seeds in for a hydroponic system, that rock wool needs to stay wet while the seed is getting established. But if you're hanging that into a fish tank and it's not yet touching the water, because the cup is going to be above the level of the water. And I can send you pictures to show you this.
So could you just push the cup down deeper so it is in water?
You can. You can. It's a little bit harder to do in a fish tank system. If you're a fish tank person, you know that the fish tank water isn't to the very tippity top.
Right.
And those cups are only about 2 inches deep. So you have a 2-inch cup hanging over the tank. The tank water is going to have to stay pretty darn high for that to always be submerged in the right way. So yeah, you can do it. I don't know that I would in a fish tank system. It's just as easy to put those net cups into a Tupperware container and leave them with a little bit of water on the bottom, let them root, and then move them into the aquaponics system.
So that's your experience.
Yeah, just from my experience, it just works out well if you pre-root them.
Okay, so we had a conversation too before about hydroponics and how the nutrient system can be so costly. What is your alternative to that?
Yeah, I'm pretty frugal, and we have a number of hydroponic stores around here, plus online, and I found that it was really cost prohibitive to run with the commercial available material. So I took just normal compost, and I made compost tea, and I run any system that isn't running off of a fish tank is running off compost tea. And what that basically is I take a 5-gallon bucket and a paint strainer. If you just go to the hardware store and get a 5-gallon paint strainer, they're great. They're basically little net bags. And you put compost in the net bag, and you just throw it in with some warm water, and I put a little molasses in there, and an air bubbler. And I let it sit for a couple of days, and then pull out the bag with the worm compostings in, and what's left over is the compost tea. And literally that's what I put into my hydroponic systems, and that's the stuff that gets pumped through the systems to feed the plants.
Okay, so I think I know, but share with the audience why you use the molasses.
The molasses, you basically want the bacteria in the compost to basically do its work by breaking down the stuff that's in the compost. And the sugar in the molasses actually expedites that, makes that process faster.
And would you have to utilize worm castings, or can you use any other kind of compost?
You can use any compost. I like worm castings because I know that they're really rich in a wide variety of nutrients, but you can certainly use your own compost. So if you have a compost pile at home, just put that stuff in some water. Again, I put it in the mesh bag first, because it's just easier to then pull out the soil part, the compost part, and what you're left with is the tea. So you're literally making a giant tea bag. And the sugar in the molasses just helps the process. And you do want an air bubble in there, because again, there's bacteria in there, and you don't want to drown your bacteria. You want the air bubble in there to help circulate and help them breathe.
So I know with indoor gardening, some folks can have challenges with that because of lighting situations. What would you say, or what is your experience with the lighting that you use? I
use a whole variety of lighting. Most of my plants are in front of a window, and what I do is you can either get like a meter or a timer, and so I have the natural light coming in, and as the natural light starts to fade, the grow lights kick on. So I'm not making my electrical bill really high. The grow lights and the natural light work together. In some instances, I just have grow lights, and I use both the blue-red spectrum and full spectrum grow lights. I don't really know that there's a major difference between them. I've never really noticed between between the white light and the purple red whether there's a giant difference. And I love the and you can get it on Amazon, the light tape, which comes in a roll, and it's very flexible. You can put it anywhere, and it comes in grow light spectrum. So if you check on any Amazon site or hardware store, I know Home Depot and Lowe's sells it. Just make sure you get
what is it called? Tape lights?
It's called LED light tape.
Lights tape.
Yep, and it literally comes in a roll, and it usually has a peel off back, and you can bend and stick it anywhere.
Okay. So let's change it up a little bit, leave hydroponics, and tell me what kind of animals you have at the homestead.
Right now we have chickens and ducks. We've had other things along the way, but chickens and ducks are what are really typical for us. We eat the eggs, and depending upon the situation with the ducks, sometimes we eat the ducks. My ideal is to have 6 females and 2 males. Or 1 male for the ducks, and if you get straight runs, that isn't always possible. So if we have extra males, then they become what we call freezer ducks, but otherwise we do it for the eggs.
Okay.
So, and it's great because we have a pond that we made for the ducks, and they love it because ducks are so much fun. So we basically took a raised bed, like a typical raised bed that you put in a garden. Instead of putting soil in the raised bed, we actually lined it with pond liner and filled it with water, and the ducks have a blast. They actually swim in it, and it's right in our enclosed area, so they're safe and they have full access to water, and they go in there and they splash like crazy. They love it. So
do you have a ramp for them to get into there?
No, and it's kind of funny. I have a step for them to get in and out. Like I put a cinder block in the water so it stays down, and a step on the outside, but most of the time they're really funny the way they do it, but they just go in. And ducks fly. We don't clip their wings, so they can certainly fly in and out if they want, and they do. But yeah, they always manage to get in. Don't let them, they'll stand by the side acting like they're having a hard time doing it, but they find their way into water no matter what. So, and what we do is we actually built a filter system. So we have a pump that pumps into essentially a giant trash bag. A giant trash can, and we have fiber, like just cotton fiber in the trash can, and rocks, and the water filters through and goes back into the duck pond, so it cleans itself. And that's always a challenge to keep the ducks clean.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I thought maybe you might have, a lot of folks have, like at the bottom of their pools, a little drain where you can open up and drain the water out or something, but that's really a great idea.
Yeah, we use a sump pump to lift it up and then have it fall back in as clean water. I don't have a situation where I would have a place to drain it down lower. because the ducts are in a relatively flat area. So instead of being able to drain it off, we pump it up. And we use a sump pump. We've tried a number of different submergible pumps, but there's usually so much debris that the ducks like to bring into the water that the sump pump, just a full out basement sump pump, works great.
And it's great because you're repurposing that water and fertilizing your garden or plants. So
yeah, we always take that water. Sometimes we run it directly into a system, a hydroponic system, and sometimes if we don't have a hydroponic system set up at that time, we take what we call the duck sludge out of that barrel, and we either dump it right into the compost pile, or sometimes onto the plants or onto the beds to use it. Yeah, we never let anything like that go to waste. That's great nutrients.
Yes, it is. So what other type of sustainable practices are you doing at the house there, your farm?
Well, we try really hard to live as much off-grid as possible. I mean, obviously we do have electricity, we do have internet, but we heat with wood stoves. We recycle everything we can possibly recycle, repurpose. We do a lot of woodworking with pallets, pallet wood. Mostly everything is reused somehow or other. I don't really throw anything away, but my house isn't full of junk because I seem to find a reason to use everything.
Yeah. And I know that you are a big advocate for recycling. As you said, you owned one of the biggest recycling centers in your area at one time.
Yeah.
So bravo to you on that. You also said that you use a lot of just miscellaneous containers and things.
I hate to throw anything away, and you get things. I like yogurt, and I get the big container of yogurt, and those are nice plastic containers. So I don't need them for storage as far as using things. I use them for planters. I love using those as planters. The other thing I like to use as planters, which people may not think of, I get the bag of coffee, the little 1 pound bag of coffee. Those bags are great for planters. So I go through a bag of coffee a week, and I use those to plant seeds in. They're really good. You can easily make them drainable. They stand up on their own, and they're a great size.
Wow, I never even thought of that. That is a great idea. And they're deep. So they're good for like tomato starts and stuff.
Oh yeah, they're deep and they stand up on their own. And they're usually made out of a really strong material because they hold the coffee. But they're easy to poke holes in the bottom for drainage.
Yeah.
So those are one of my favorite things to use. But there really isn't much that comes into the house that isn't used one way or the other. But that's a big one for us.
Okay. One of the things that we talk about as gardeners and problems with growing indoors are fungus gnats.
Yeah.
I thought that, well, gosh, maybe I'm just overwatering because that's what they say. They love, they come in the wet soils. You said your experience that you think that they do come from the bagged soils that you purchase right off the bat, the eggs.
They do. I've done a lot of research on this because I'm an avid indoor gardener. We haven't talked much about the fact that I don't really have an outdoor garden anymore. I do everything inside. I grow full vegetables inside. Because I just get tired of New England weather outside.
Right.
So I have experienced major those gnat problems for sure. So I came up with I tried everything, the apple cider vinegar, I tried diatomaceous earth, I've tried a whole bunch of things and nothing really works, except I found that if you heat the soil, first off, to answer your other question, yeah, the research I did certainly shows that there's a long history of consumer complaints about those gnats coming in with the soil in the bag. So it's nothing that you're doing. Those are coming in the soil. So when you purchase a bag of soil, even from a really established, well-known company, you have a high likelihood of bringing those in. So you need to deal with them. And a couple ways I deal with them. One is if you heat the soil up to 300 degrees, I usually just put soil, spread it out on a cookie sheet. Whatever container I'm going to fill up that day, I put that soil out on a cookie sheet. I put it in my oven, 300 degrees, let the soil temperature come up to 300. Then I shut the oven off and just let it cool down. It takes a while, but it works. And that will kill off a lot of that fungus. It does kill off some of the organic stuff too. So, there's always a pro and con to that. If you cannot heat the soil, great. it's a risk you take. So there's, benefits, there's a cost benefit of that for sure. But I just find it easier just to give it a quick heat. And then the other thing that I do is I use those mouse traps, the glue mouse traps. And I know they're horrible for mice. People don't like the fact that the mouse is alive and they can't move and the rest, and they are horrible for mice. But they're great for gnats. So I literally get don't get the bug ones, because the bug ones aren't as sticky. So if you buy fly traps and stuff, I find that they're not as effective. Buy the ones that are the glue that is designed for capturing mice. And I literally take those traps and I stick them right in the pots or in my soil, so it's right down next to the soil. And it is amazing how much those curtail that problem. It won't get everything, but what will happen is the adults will fly up and they'll start buzzing around and they'll hit those and they cannot escape. They're done for. It is amazing how attractive those are. And most of those mice traps come with a yellow background for whatever reason. And those bugs are attracted to yellow. Right. So they have the right glue, they have the right color, and it keeps them at bay. It really does. Those are the two things that I found. And I definitely have dealt with infestations of those, and those two things are hands down the best. I mean, I've tried the hydrogen peroxide watering, doesn't really work. God, there really isn't anything that I've read on the internet that I haven't tried.
I think all gardeners at some point have dealt with this, and I've tried buying like yellow like index cards and putting Vaseline on them. I've tried cinnamon water with garlic. I've tried all kinds of stuff and nothing. And the yellow fly tape. Now the yellow fly tape has worked for me, but it doesn't get rid of them altogether. At some point, like they come out of the soil and those ones you'll catch them, but those ones that are in the ground, I don't know.
This is the thing, that the adults will come out of the soil, and so it's not an absolute, but the adults come out of the soil, and when they come out, they'll get caught on the glue. What happens is they lay eggs in the soil. So that I haven't found anything that will effectively kill the eggs without killing the plants. I actually bought some stuff at Agway one time. It was supposed to be all organic, natural, this and that, and I sprayed it on a bunch of houseplant vegetables that I had growing, and it killed everything. It killed the gnats, but it killed all my plants too. So since that tragic event, I've tried really hard to stay away from even something that says organic. And I can live with the gnat problem if I take the edge off by heating the soil and then I use the glue. It does keep them at bay.
Okay. So we're getting ready to wrap up. Just a couple of things I wanted to talk about your blog, how long you've been blogging, what it consists of.
Okay, great. Well, my blog is again at MomsIndoorGarden.com. And basically my goal with the blog is to teach people how to garden indoors. Because we live in New Hampshire and don't have a long growing season, indoors is great. A lot of people live in the city and they don't have the opportunity to have a garden. I know community gardens are big, but not everybody wants to go down to the neighborhood community garden. So given that, I just love gardening indoors. So basically my blog talks about all the traditional kitchen vegetables, carrots, broccoli, all those types of things, tomatoes, and how to do it indoors. And a lot of times I'll talk about hydroponics. I do a lot on the hydroponic tomatoes or the hydroponic fish tables. But there's a lot on soil too, because potatoes, carrots, things like that don't grow very well with hydroponics. So it's all about growing containers indoors, small spaces, how to light it, how to deal with heat issues, how to deal with bug issues. All about just basically, my goal is to live off the land, but my land consists of a bunch of pots. At this point, even though I have land outside, I don't want to use that. I want to use inside. So basically, if you want to learn how to homestead without ever actually going outside, check out the blog and hopefully you can learn something and give me some ideas. If you see anything missing.
And that's one thing that I'm a big activist for, is sharing that, homesteading is a frame of mind. It's not how big your lot size is. It's not where you live. It's about utilizing what you have and, trying to be sustainable and growing your food however you have to do it. And
Yep.
you're doing both, the best of both worlds. You're growing indoors, you got some chickens outside. I mean, it works for you.
Yep.
So
I'm
I think
lucky. I'd have my chickens inside if I could, but they'd be a mess.
yeah,
So
and
they
I
get
think,
to,
I
they
think
get to
that's
swim.
fabulous. So,
Yeah.
Dorothy, thank you so much for spending your time and sharing your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to hearing from all the other gardeners too.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again for joining me today. And
Thank you.
you have a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.